Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my kind of final impressions review, I guess you could say, of Pokemon Legends Arceus. This is kind of, I guess, a follow up on my first impressions review of the game, and it's just kind of like my full thoughts after having completed the main game. Because my first impressions, I still had quite a bit to go on it and everything. So while I haven't completed the after game stuff, like the post game content, and I haven't completed the Pokédex yet, um, I feel like I'm still at a good point where I can talk about the game as a whole. So I'm gonna try to keep this brief. There's not much to talk about, like in regards to like you know the basic stuff because again I talked about that before. I'm just going to kind of discuss my thoughts on the experience as a whole and kind of talk to you about it in like specific parts. So let's talk about the characters and story. So as mentioned before, the story is basically an isekai. You're transported by God Arceus to this ancient Sinnoh, which is known as the Hisui region at that time, and you end up helping the Galaxy Expedition Team, specifically the Survey Corps, in recording Pokemon for the Pokédex. You end up helping them out by quelling the frenzy of their Lord Pokemon and just kind of helping save Hisui in that regard. It's fairly simple stuff, but it's effective in what it needs to be. For a game like this, having a more cut back story kind of works. Like the story, it's not on the level of the recent generations. It's not on the level of Sword and Shield. It's not on the level of Sun and Moon, but it's not really meant to be because again, it's more cut back. It's more held back. The game is clearly more about the experience of the gameplay and the different style than it usually takes, as well as the look into the like well off past of the canon franchise. Um, so it's interesting in that regard. But again, for as short and cut back as it is, the story is good. It's pretty general but good. The characters themselves are definitely the biggest selling point of this for me. Um, because as I've said in the past, story and characters are always a bigger point for any game than gameplay will ever be. Um, Story and characters hook you in more than anything else could. Um, and I feel like the characters in this are fantastic. They really just feel like they've taken the kind of growth and expansion to characters and their backstories and their depth that previous generations like Gen 7 and 8 have mastered, and they've taken it just as far. All the characters in this feel like they are living, breathing people. From the beautiful couple of Polina and Isan to the tough headed Commander Kamado, and even the tough but secretly caring Captain Silene. Like, all of them have these great personalities, and even characters who are less important to the story and everything, who are just kind of there as, like, background or side characters, characters like Arezu or Zisu or whatnot. Like, they're still enchanting. Like, it makes a point of making all of these characters extremely likable. Um, so it's definitely the highlight for me there. New Pokemon and forms, almost all of them look great. There's a couple that look a little off for me. Like Overquill is just like, yeah, it kind of live up to your name. That's the joke. I get it, but it's like it's still just a little too much. And I guess you would call it Hisuian Dialga is just dumb as fuck looking. Like Hisuian Palkia is okay, but Hisuian Dialga is just no. Just no. The net cannon is just a no. But most of the new Hisuian forms or just new Pokemon evolutions in general look great. Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine, Hisuian Voltorb, um, Sneasler, like they look great. Hisuian Sliggoo and Gudra are fantastic and wonderful. Uh, they change just enough to where it makes sense. Like especially Hisuian Sliggoo and Gudra. Like when you think about it, it's basically just the same Pokemon just in shells. And so it's like sometime, which kind of implies that sometime over the period of history, they just abandoned their shells and just stopped using them, but they're still the same Pokemon otherwise. And that's how the quote unquote regional variants in this regard work. And it's just like, that's just kind of smart. And then Hisuian Voltorb and Electrode, I guess they just changed over time and became angrier, I guess. Um, and I assume that the Pokeballs were designed to look like them. It doesn't actually state it as such in the game, but I assume that's the case. And so, since the original Pokeballs here look like the Hisuian forms, I assume the future iterations of Pokeballs were designed to look like them after they have had evolved. Not like evolved in the Pokemon sense, but evolved in more of like a real sense. Um, and stuff like that. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. Um, then there's the ride Pokemon. You have certain Pokemon that you can ride and use for different things. Um, you have Weird Deer, who you can just go around the areas quickly on. You have Ursaluna, who can search for stuff. You have Basculegion, your surf companion, basically. Sneasler, who can climb cliffs and stuff. Like all of them serve a great purpose. All of them are fantastic. They all work for their own specific reasons. Braviary, it allows you to fly around the area, get places quicker, and or find Pokemon in the sky and stuff a little easier. It's like they all have their various purposes and they all work really well. The weakest one for me is Ursaluna, just because it's like most of the time you use it, you're just gonna find mud. You're gonna find mud balls, and it's like, you're not really useful, are you? Yeah, occasionally you'll find something good, but it's honestly not that common that you do. And honestly, you don't really need to do it. Like you don't really need to go around using Ursaluna to find stuff. It's not really that big of a deal. Everything you need you can find or make yourself without that. It just seems like the most useless of them, but that doesn't mean it's completely useless. And some people may have a lot of fun doing that, using Ursaluna for that regard. Um, and it's just in that regard really fun. There's also these sort of boss fights where you have to quell frenzied Pokemon. Um, and some of them get progressively harder because of like different Pokemon doing different things and reacting in different ways. Though the hardest is not the last one. The hardest one is by far the Hisuian Arcanine boss fight. That is just insane. And I blacked out twice while trying to get through it. um, it's really difficult. Um, but in a fun way. It never feels like it's like overly difficult to the point of unenjoyability. And none of them do. Um, the general gameplay and style of this game, where it's as people have compared it to closer to like Monster Hunter, is fun. going around getting to throw Pokeballs just randomly at all the wild Pokemon you see, getting to interact with them and stuff, and just these large open spaces you get to explore. It's just really fun. If I had to say my favorite area is the Icelands, the Alabaster Icelands. Not only is it just the biggest area in the game, it just feels the most interesting. Like different areas really feel like different areas in the Icelands, different parts of the Icelands. Like you can go to this one area, find like an Alpha Lucario and Riolus and stuff hanging around, and it feels like a completely different area from like Avalug's Legacy, which is like filled with Glalie and some Avalugs and uh, Bergmites and stuff. It feels like a completely different area, yet it's part of the same basic area of the Hisui region, and that's fascinating to me. There's also some post game stuff where you get to go around and catch a bunch of legendaries, and that's pretty interesting. Um, that's been pretty fun so far. I haven't done all of them yet. I'm still in the process of that, but that's pretty cool. The crafting system's great. I do love the crafting system. Um, it really just works. Like anytime you really need something and you don't have the materials, it's like, oh, that's my fault. I need to go out and get those materials more often. Which definitely happens with me and iron chunks a lot. I'm very much that's the one material I'm always short on. Apricorns I have a shit ton of. Like I have too many apricorns. But iron chunks, it's like that's the one thing that I oftentimes am lacking um, when I need them. And just overall, I just had a lot of fun with this. It's not as engaging to me as Shield was. And part of that might be because Shield was my first Pokemon game since I played X and Y. I think I played Y specifically. But I didn't play through Gen 7 myself, so it had been a bit since I played Pokemon, and coming back to it like that was a really big deal for me. And it was just that good as well for me. It was that great of an experience. So that does probably influence things a bit. But I just honestly, I enjoyed the story, and even in a lot of cases, a lot of the characters just more in in Shield than I did in Legends Arceus. And again, as I said, for me, that's the most important aspects of a game like this. Obviously, for like a puzzle game or something, those things aren't that important. But for a game where the story and characters are a notable part of it, where it's an active portion of the game, like yeah, you have to have good story and characters, and that is the most important because that's what engages you and hooks you in. Like it just it's just key from my perspective. So I do think that they were better in Shield. The story and characters in that were just a little bit better, were just a little more refined, a little more like fully handled. Because again, in this one, it's like with, especially with the story, it's just like it's very cut back. They just didn't put as much into it. But again, I don't know fully where the stuff with the post game is going. You're trying to collect all the plates and stuff, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see where all of that heads to. I'm not gonna make another review after this to talk about that, but um, yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. I would probably put this up as my second favorite Pokemon game after Shield, and it's something that really incentivizes you to just keep playing even after you've beaten the main story, to keep going through and catching and recording all the Pokemon, getting all their info, to just getting all of the wisps, which are basically like Korok seeds for this game. Um, it makes you want to actually do like the entire catch 'em all thing, which in pretty much every other Pokemon game has no real incentive to do. Like in every other Pokemon game, it's like something like, oh, you can do it if you want, but there's no real point to it. It just wastes your time. But in this game, it's actually like, oh, this is actually an important thing. Like you can't see Arceus again until you do this. That's the point. It's literally a core element of this game. And it's the only Pokemon game to do that. The only Pokemon game to actually incentivize you to catch them all. And I know I mentioned this in the other review, the first impressions, but that does really like work in this regard because it actually makes that feel like less of a chore and less of something that you just are doing for the sake of doing, and it makes it feel like it's something that's actually fun and entertaining. Especially when you find like Pokemon that are really rare spawns. Like I'm still trying to find Pichu, for example, which is a really rare spawn, and it's like I've gone to the places where it supposedly appears and have not found it. It's just like, oh my god, this is annoying. Munchlax too. Munchlax is another rare spawn, but it's like I keep wanting to try and find it because it's like, yeah, it's a genuine goal in this game. It's genuinely something that you want to do because you want to complete the Pokédex. And there's no breeding in this game, so you can't just breed two Pikachus together to get a Pichu. So you actually have to find one. You can evolve, so you can get a Raichu without finding it in the wild, but you have to get a Pichu naturally in the wild. So yeah, either way, I very much enjoyed this. It was a great game. If I had like one aspect of the game, I would say was the biggest negative. It's that the music is boring. Like it's not bad by any means, but when you had the score that Pokemon Sword and Shield had, that was so phenomenally done, to where even Toby Fox had a song in the game. It's like they didn't. They it felt like they almost didn't try with this one. Like the score, like there's a couple songs in it that are good, but then everything else is mostly just kind of boring and atmospheric and everything, which fits the game. But it's also, again, it's boring. It's definitely the weakest aspect of this. But for the score to be the weakest aspect is actually a positive overall because it allows for everything else to shine as well. So there is that at least. Although a good score can also help things shine. So maybe it could have even been better. It's very possible. Um, will they make more of these? I don't know. It's possible, but this could end up just being a one time thing. And no matter what the case, even if this is just a one time spin off game, even though it is actually considered a main series generational game, um, it's still one of those things that is just really entertaining and really fun and enjoyable to go through. Um, so hopefully we end up getting Generation 9 before not too long. Probably won't happen this year, but maybe next year. If it does happen this year, though, I wouldn't be opposed. It's just, we'll see. We'll see. We probably have another year to wait, just based on the timetables of when Pokemon generations tend to come out. Um, so yeah, I'm excited nonetheless for what Gen 9 will eventually bring us. But in the meantime, this was a very good addition to Generation 8, and it was definitely a fresh step. Uh, if I had to say, if I had to give my thoughts, I hope that this is not like the full on future of the Pokemon games. Some people have said that they want Pokemon to just continue in this direction indefinitely. I don't. I would rather have it return to its more classic style in the same way like Sword and Shield have had been. There's the typical gameplay style of it, while obviously keeping it fresh and exciting like Sword and Shield did. Um, but I don't want it to go like full on with this like Monster Hunter style gameplay. Like it's just I don't feel like it would work as like a full uh, switch over because again it's not enough. There's too little to it to really hold its own as like the standard going forward. The standard still needs to remain the same with just the updates and changes that they naturally make along the way. Graphically, they could definitely go more in this direction, but yeah. um, Either way, tell me in the comments below. Have you finished the main story for Pokemon Legends Arceus, and what do you think of it? Um, if you know where the post game content goes, the post main story content, do not tell me. I still haven't finished that, so I'm still trying to see where all of that goes, and still trying to collect all the wisps and all the Pokemon as well. So yeah. Either way, thank you so much for tuning in once again, and for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.